invite Professor Joe Wang, Associate Vice President and Vice Provost, International Student Experience, to the stage to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Let me say at the outset that I would like to welcome everyone to this fantastic event. I also bring greetings from the President of the United States. I bring greetings from the President of the University of Toronto, a much better man, as well as our Provost Cheryl Regier, who were unable to join us tonight, but extend their congratulations to everyone here, particularly all of our partners, as well as all of the distinguished leaders in this room. I'd like to extend particularly warm wishes to those of you who've traveled from China, including the representatives from the various partner institutions involved in the Green Path program, as well as all of our friends here in Toronto from the Chinese-Canadian community. My name is Professor Joseph Wang, and I have the privilege of serving as the Associate Vice President and Vice Provost of the University of Toronto, and my portfolio oversees the international student experience. I was recently having a conversation with a former student of mine, Adam Liu, who is actually a Green Path scholar, and you remember Adam?
Of course.
And he was a Green Path student. I had the privilege of teaching him at Fudan University, actually. He ended up doing a master's degree here at the University of Toronto. He then proceeded to do a PhD at Stanford University, and he's now a professor at the National University of Singapore after doing a postdoc at Yale. And I had a chance to chat with him because I was delighted that he invited me to give a talk at his august institution. And he was asking me, what it was like to be a professor at a school like the University of Toronto as he's about to embark on his own journey and his own career at the National University of Singapore. And I wanted to share with him the real journey that has been my own journey as a Chinese-Canadian scholar. Someone who was educated, grew up in Brampton, was educated in Montreal, and then at various points in the United States, and then coming back. As a Chinese-Canadian growing up in Toronto, Toronto was a very different place when I was growing up. I was the only non-white kid in my high school. I had to travel from Brampton to Spadina, downtown, to go to Chinese school with my sister. This was a very different Toronto. We talk about a multicultural Canada as though it's been here forever. Indeed, it's actually a very recent phenomenon, driven in part by the very people in this room, and indeed it's something that has shaped me a great deal as a young person growing up in this country. In 1992, I had to have my first trip to China. This was really exciting when my parents had not been back to China since I was born. In fact, I don't think they'd been back to China in about 20, 30 years at that point. And for me, going back to China in 1992 was in one sense like a going home kind of experience. It demonstrated to me that my Chinese needed a lot of work. But it also ignited an interest in me, not only as a person, but also the region, China, as a place of scholarly interest. And it was at that point that I decided to dedicate my academic career to the study of China. Fast forward now, I've been at the University of Toronto my entire teaching career as a professor, nearly 20 years. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that this a course that I teach at Fudan University in Shanghai. And it's a really unique course because I bring U of T students, Chinese students, Canadian students, students from around the world, and we go to Fudan University in Shanghai, and I co-teach this course with colleagues from Fudan University. And we also have students from Fudan University. And people talk about, well, that must be a really interesting course to teach, and I always say, I don't actually do much teaching. The real learning takes place through the conversations that the students have. We're there to facilitate the discussion, we're there to facilitate the debate, but the real learning takes place when you have students from around the world, clashing sometimes, but engaging with one another and learning through this respectful, meaningful dialogue. At the core of that is diversity. And a couple things we're very proud of at the University of Toronto. We're, of course, ranked as one of the top universities in the world. But I think actually one of the things that we're most proud of is the extraordinary diversity at our campus. I think that we can legitimately boast that any student who comes to the University of Toronto can have a truly global education without ever leaving our campus. That you can come to our university and have an opportunity to meet with students, faculty, and staff from around the world. And this is one of the greatest virtues of our university because, after all, diversity is the basis of lifelong friendships, because you have to work at these friendships when you're meeting with people who are different from you. Diversity is the pathway to mutual understanding through dialogue. I oftentimes say to my friends in the political world that the universities have an important role to play because we engage in dialogue. We don't play politics. And indeed, diversity is the engine of progress, especially when the world today seems to be closing doors. The university is an important place where we can keep these doors open.